Hello everyone and welcome to my Metru official channel. Lucky is rushed to the hospital, Joss kills Cyrus and calls Jack for help, and BLQ informs Chase that she has a baby. Thursday, February 20th, 2025, Curtis begs Stella for a favor, Lulu and Dante discuss her troubles with BLQ, and Jordan, Anna, and Laura debate whether Sunny or Sidwell is worse. In Wednesday's recap, Lucky was stabbed with a syringe while attempting to save Liz from Cyrus, and Drew asked Willow to move in. BLQ is taken aback when she enters into her room to see rose petals on the floor and Chase waiting for her in bed. They kiss. She wonders how she got so lucky. He reminds her that he is unable to have a child with her. When he gets ready, she reminds him of their wedding vows and claims she meant them. He's certain she didn't expect this. She'll admit it's difficult, but life throws curveballs. They can still have a family, and he learns how wonderful adoption can be. The cop is still worried that he is depriving her of the experience of having a baby. As he talks about it, she yells at him to stop and discloses that she has had a baby. As Lucky battles Cyrus, Liz phones the cops. Renault injects Lucky with digitalis, pushes him to the ground, and from the room. She begins performing chest compressions on Lucky. When Anna walks into Laura's office, she and Jordan are discussing the esplanade. The mayor informs her about the fight over location. Who poses the largest threat? Sunny, Drew, or Sidwell? They discuss that and how Sunny avoids the law. Jordan is concerned that Drew intends to take down Sunny. Laura is frightened that Sidwell and Drew are working together. That also worries Anna. Jordan would sooner deal with the devil he knows than the unknown. Anna asks if the PCPD should investigate whether Drew can be trusted at all. She receives a call concerning Cyrus as Liz informs Laura that Lucky is in jeopardy. In the deception office, Dante informs Lulu about BLQ and Chase's fertility problems. She feels bad and is concerned about BLQ's single-mindedness. They discuss the joy of parenting. Dante believes BLQ deserves that joy, and he wishes Lulu knew her as well as he does. They sit down and recap what happened when BLQ tried to split them up. He suggests they should let it go. He and BLQ are only buddies. If she believes BLQ wants more from him, she's mistaken. Lulu says that she feels threatened since she has been so out of the loop for 4 years. It's as if BLQ stepped into every critical aspect of her life while she was away. She is beginning to question if there is still room for her. He understands that. Lulu wishes to apologize to BLQ, but he claims he told her this in confidence. She gets a call from Jordan regarding Lucky, and they leave. Jason goes to Sam's grave. He has to pick between what he wants and what he believes she would desire. He wants to kill Cyrus and is confident he can get away with it. But he's confident she'd want him to prioritize their son over his need for revenge. Jason promises to put Danny first. Willow is surprised when Drew asks her to move into his new house. He wants to make this a home for both of their families. She mentions how she and the kids have been bouncing around. They require steadiness. That is part of the reason he is asking her to move in now. He believes it would be beneficial for them all to calm down and breathe. I really want this place to be the first step to our future together, he tells me. She thinks it sounds wonderful, but their position is far from perfect. She is still married. Drew does not believe it will be a problem. She reveals that Wiley still believes she and Michael will be a family again. It would feel wrong to move her kid and Amelia in with Drew. He won't put pressure on her and says she can tell the kids when she's ready. She isn't comfortable with that while Michael is at the clinic. Jason arrives after Willow has gone home. Drew is astonished by his desire to make peace. He does not feel the same way. Anna arrives at Liz, and a cop tells her what occurred. There is an APB for Cyrus. Aiden arrives, stunned by what has occurred. Liz informs Gannon at General Hospital that Lucky has had a digital injection. She hurries out to fill Laura in. The nurse informs the mayor that she and Lucky were on Cyrus. He admitted that he tried to kill Lulu and Sam. Laura's eyes are wide open. Anna welcomes Aiden before departing with Liz to answer some queries. When Dante and Lulu arrive, Anna tells them she could use all the support they can get. They discover that Cyrus went to the woods and wonder why. Gannon announces Lucky's condition. Joss breaks into Cyrus' cabin and begins to snoop. Eventually, she discovers an envelope with Dex's medical wristband. Cyrus appears as she takes images of the proof. He grabs a hatchet and tells her she cannot jeopardize his objective. Joss gets out his revolver and shoots him. He falls. He coughs up blood and adds, "Now you're the murderer." After confirming that he is dead, she calls Jack and requests his assistance. Jack arrives just moments later. Stella joins Portia and Curtis at the Savoy. She was pleased to complete her Galentine's Day by spending time with her nephew. He hands her a special cocktail as Portia exits. Curtis informs his auntie that there may be a favor only she can fulfill. He knows she is pals with Congressman Douglas Henderson. They discuss how powerful he is. Curtis requests that she introduce them so he can establish a friendship with the politician before Drew spoils things. He informs her that Drew has turned vengeful and has dark energy. Will she help him? Of course, his auntie will. She's quite proud of him. Brennan's cover-up, Lucky flatlines, Drew stunned, and Dante's mission. The General Hospital spoilers for Friday, February 21st, 2025 are here. In tomorrow's episode, fans may expect physicians to scramble to save Lucky Spencer. Jason Morgan extends a truce to Drew Kane Quartermain. Furthermore, Jack Brennan advises covering up Cyrus Renault's death. Continue reading to learn more about what will happen in the next episode of ABC's soap opera. Brooke Lynn Quartermain's Bombshell. On Friday, February 21st, Harrison Chase responds to Brooke Lynn Quartermain's Bombshell. Chase was shocked when BLQ revealed that she was already pregnant. Brooke Lynn is taken aback as he recounts his encounter with Chase. However, Chase may feel betrayed. There is also the risk that Chase will tell Dante Falconeri, which could pose complications for Cody Bell. After all, Dante might believe that Cody should have told him years ago rather than maintaining Brooke Lynn's secret. In any event, expect more disruption as this information continues to leak. Anna Devane's Bombshell. Speaking of Dante, he receives exciting news from Anna Devane. In a preview clip, Dante informs Anna that Cyrus cannot hide. Dante is correct in this regard, given Cyrus' recent murder. Jack Brennan's damage control. General Hospital spoilers reveal that Cyrus was prepared to hack up Jocelyn Jacks. However, Jocelyn killed the villain and immediately phoned Brennan for assistance. To Jocelyn's amazement, Brennan proposes they take care of it themselves rather than calling the cops. Lucky Spencer's fate. At the hospital, Isaiah Gannon and Portia Robinson will race to save Lucky Spencer's life. As Lucky begins coding, his loved ones are eagerly awaiting the results. Elizabeth Liz Baldwin can be seen alongside Jake Weber, Lulu Spencer, and Laura Collins. In a preview, Jack becomes concerned about his father's possible death. While Lucky is coding, he is likely to live. After all, Liz was aware of what he was being injected with, and Isaiah had previously saved individuals from digitalis overdoses. At the same time, Lucky has several health difficulties that may impede his recuperation. Meanwhile, Jason offers Drew a truce. However, will Drew accept it or will his enormous ego take over? Also, Sasha Gilmore Corbin makes a confession. Certainly. The following is a thorough, immersive narrative that captures the emotional and psychological intensity of Cyrus confessing to Elizabeth just before a vital, life-changing deed. While all strive for depth and richness, keep in mind that a 3,000-word narrative is usually broken into paragraphs to improve reading. However, per your request, I'll show it as a single block to maintain flow. Spoiler tags are omitted, as asked. The room was a tomb of shadows, lit only by the flickering fluorescence of a dying overhead bulb that cast jagged patterns across the sterile steel surfaces, the air thick with the acrid tang of antiseptic and the unspoken weight of decades-old secrets, and Cyrus stood at the center of it all, his trembling hands clutching the syringe filled with digitalis like a lifeline, its amber liquid glinting ominously under the sparse light, a poison disguised as salvation. Well, what in God's name are you doing? But he didn't flinch, not yet, because the floodgates had already opened, the confession spilling out of him like blood from a severed artery, raw and unstoppable, his words tumbling over one another as he confessed to the lies, the betrayals, the cold calculus of his choices, how he'd falsified the research, sabotaged the clinical trials, orchestrated the cover-ups, all to protect the empire he'd built, the pharmaceutical dynasty that now teetered on the edge of collapse, and how the figure lying motionless on the gurney before them, the one hooked to monitors that beeped a weak, irregular rhythm, was not just a patient but a witness, the only person who could expose him, who'd threatened to go public with the truth about the drug that had killed hundreds under the guise of healing, and Cyrus, his voice cracking under the weight of a guilt he'd buried for years, admitted that this injection, was the only way to silence the storm, to protect Elizabeth herself, or so he'd deluded himself into believing. Because hadn't she been his partner, his confidant, the one person he'd sworn to shield from the wreckage? But Elizabeth, her face pale as moonlight, took a step forward, her hand outstretched in command rather than supplication, her voice rising now, trembling with a mix of wrath and grief as she shouted, "You think this is protection? Do you think murder will save us?" And for a moment, Cyrus faltered, the syringe slipping in his sweat-slit grip, his gaze darting to the patient's ashen face, the frail rise and fall of their chest, and he wondered, not for the first time, when he'd become this hollow shell of a man, when the line between saving lives and ending them had blurred into oblivion, but then Elizabeth was closer, her fingers brushing his wrist, not to seize the syringe but to force him to look at her, to see the tears streaky not for me. Not for anyone, and something in her words, in the way her voice broke over anyone, pierced the armor he'd welded around his conscience, and suddenly the room felt smaller, the walls closing in, the monitor's beeps crescendoing like a countdown, and Cyrus found himself speaking faster, the words raw and unfiltered, confessing the truth he'd sworn he'd take to his grave, that the patient wasn't just a witness but family, a sibling he'd abandoned years ago, who'd resurface. It isn't too late. We can repair this, together. But Cyrus shook his head, a broken laugh escaping him as he gestured to the syringe, to the vials littering the counter, to the files strewn across the floor that detailed every sin, every compromised step, and he choked out, "Don't you see? This cannot be fixed. There's only containing it," and in that moment, the patient stirred, their eyelids fluttering open, their gaze locking onto Cyrus with a clarity that froze his blood, accusation, recognition, sorrow, and a weak hand reached up, grasping at the air as if to summon words that wouldn't come, and Elizabeth, following his gaze, lunged toward the bedside, her medical instincts overriding everything else as she checked the monitors, adjusted the her voice firm now, clinical, as she barked at Cyrus to call for help, to put the syringe down, to choose, for once in his goddamn life, to do the right thing, but Cyrus remained rooted, the digitalis burning in his grip like a cursed relic, his mind a tempest of memories. His father's voice preaching legacy above morality, his mother's funeral, the first time he'd watched a patient die from his drug side effects and told himself it was collateral damage, and then, as if in a trance, he raised the syringe, his thumb hovering over the plunger. Elizabeth's scream echoing in his ears like a siren, but it was the patient's voice, frail and fractured, that stopped him. "Sigh, please," a nickname no one had used since childhood, a voice from a past he'd buried. And suddenly the room tilted, his vision blurring, the syringe clattering to the floor as he collapsed to his knees, sobs wrenching from his chest, the dam of decades of denial and self-loathing finally rupturing, and Elizabeth was there, her arms around him not in forgiveness but in shared grief, her own tears mingling with his as she murmured, "We'll face it. All of it," while the monitors continued their relentless chant, a reminder that time was running out and that consequences were on the way, but for now, in that fractured moment, the digitalis pulled uselessly on the tiles, and the confession hung in the air, a specter that could either destroy them or, just maybe, set them free. Certainly. The following is a creative, thorough narrative that explores the tension of two lives in danger. Although it is presented as a continuous story, I have divided it into pieces for reading. Please let me know if there are any changes you want. The clock on the hospital wall chimed mercilessly, each second echoing like a hammer striking an anvil, as Dr. Elena Marlowe tightened her grasp on the knife. Her patient, Lucas, a 9-year-old boy, sat lifeless on the operating table, his chest spread out to expose a heart quivering faintly beneath the surgical lights. A congenital abnormality had transformed his aorta into a time bomb, and the emergency surgery had already lasted 5 hours. Sweat poured beneath Elena's clean gloves as she navigated the labyrinth of arteries, her mind racing with computations. One slip, 1 millimeter of inaccuracy, and the fragile organ might explode completely. Elena tightened her jaw as the anesthesiologist's voice crackled through her mask, BP's dropping, 80/50 and falling. She'd lost patients before, every surgeon had, but this boy's laughter lingered in the back of her mind, a sound she'd heard in the hallway just yesterday as he begged his mother for 5 more minutes on his handheld game. Elena felt the weight of his life press against her ribs as the hum of machines drowned out his laughing. "Stay with me, Lucas," she said quietly, her gaze flickering to the monitor. The jagged line on his EKG stuttered, then stabilized. For now. 300 miles away, in the pitch-black guts of an abandoned warehouse, Mia Torres squeezed her back against a corroded steel beam, her breath coming in tiny, soundless gasps. The gag over her mouth had been released, a tiny relief, but her wrists were raw from the zip ties, and the coppery taste of blood lingered on her tongue. She'd counted 3 men, the one with the scarred cheek who'd seized her outside the cafe, the wiry one who never talked, and their leader, a man whose name she'd heard whispered like a curse, Cal. She was certain they had mistaken her for someone else. "You shouldn't have snooped into things that don't concern you," Cal growled earlier, his breath smelling of cigarettes as he forced her into the van. Their sounds drifted from the next room, bits of speech interrupted by radio static. "The decrease occurs at midnight. If the cops are present, we'll throw her in the river." Mia's pulse quickened. Think. Her phone was gone, and her jacket was shredded, but her right hand came into contact with a piece of glass from a nearby broken bottle. She stretched her fingers slowly and agonizingly toward it, ignoring the debris bite in her knees. Every second counted. If she could break through the connections and find a way out before they returned, her mind rushed to her younger brother, Diego, who was waiting for her at home. She agreed to help him with his science assignment tonight. "I'm not dying here," she muttered as her fingers closed around the glass. Back in the operating room, Elena's scalpel hovered over a thin vessel. "Suction," she said, and a nurse quickly removed the field of blood. The defect was worse than the scans had indicated, the aorta had shrunk to a pinhole, and the surrounding tissue was inflamed and fragile. She'd have to graft a patch, but the boy's blood pressure was too unpredictable. A transplant would have been ideal, but the waiting list was long, and Lucas had already coded twice during pre-op. "We're out of time," the cardiologist said, his voice tightening. Elena's gaze brightened. "We make time." Her reputation was founded on defiance, rewriting the rules of possibility. 2 years ago, she saved a lawmaker by performing a bypass using a catheter and a prayer. But this was different. This was a child. A child whose mother had sobbed into Elena's scrubs, "You're his only chance." The cardiac monitor beeped irregularly. "Focus." She adjusted the magnifying loops and began suturing, her moves accurate yet rushed. A trickle of sweat slipped down her temple. A code blue alert rang somewhere beyond the hors d'oeuvres, another life on the line, but Elena turned it off. The universe was reduced to the beat of her needle, the quiver of tissue, and the tenuous hope that her hands could outrun fate.